Well, the trial of the two Freedom Convoy organizers continues in our nation's capital in Ottawa. Tamara Lich and Chris Barber have pleaded not guilty to charges of mischief, intimidation, obstruction, and other offenses related to the protests in February of 2022. The protests were against the COVID-19 mandates that saw trucks block the streets of Ottawa's downtown core. Ari Goldkind is a criminal defense lawyer, and he joins us now from Toronto to talk a bit about it. Ari, the Crown is arguing that the two crossed the line into committing crimes and encouraging others to come to the city. How do you see it?
The biggest waste of time prosecutions in the history of waste of time prosecutions. This probably takes the cake. The millions of dollars spent on this prosecution, the probably $1 million in legal fees that had to be raised for Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. This is a trial about nothing that serves no purpose other than a political agenda. Chris Barber will have a problem, I think, with one charge, but this has gotten so carried away and taken up so much court time. And here's the point, Hal. People don't think this way, but I'm on the inside. For every day that has been spent in this multi-month, multi-week trial, that's a courtroom that isn't busy prosecuting a murderer, a rapist, a carjacker, or a home invader. It's a preposterous prosecution, and I've said so from the beginning.
So, Ari, which charge specifically do you believe that Chris Barber may have a serious problem with?
First of all, the prosecution alleges they're in a conspiracy, that these two people were at the top of the pyramid in terms of getting people to Ottawa, there to occupy Ottawa and honk their horn. Now, the messages that they're going after Chris Barber for, which is, quote, he wants to cause grief or gridlock in the downtown. Think about how that applies to Chris Barber, but doesn't seem to apply to Hamas, which is occupying half the cities in Canada right now with their insanity. The police don't seem to be doing anything about that. But the message that I think Chris Barber is going to have a problem with is the one where there's a Superior Court injunction to no longer honk horns. In other words, the people have been ordered to stop honking horns. Chris Barber sends a message out to keep honking the horns. I think he's going to have a real problem on that count. The rest of it, I think, is nonsense.
The trial, which began last September, has suffered multiple delays, but has now reached the closing argument phase. Ari, how do you think this will really play out?
So it's really a focus at the end about whether these two are going to be deemed co-conspirators, which is, does the evidence against Barber apply to Tamara Lich? In short, that's a way of making it much easier to convict Tamara Lich. I do think Chris Barber and Tamara Lich are in different positions. I think in any normal reading of the law or our charter or our rights and freedoms, I think Tamara Lich should walk. I think Chris Barber should likely walk on all but the one I've just said. This case is being dragged out. People don't even know how badly it's dragged out or how much court time it's used. People forget that she spent 50 nights in jail. I can tell you there are people who have shot up streets and cities who haven't spent a night in jail. She did 50. But the judge has a real tough task here because she knows that the eyes of many, many Canadians are watching this, and it's a very difficult job to separate the political from the legal, and I don't envy her honor.
Thanks so much for your time today, Ari. That was Ari Goldkind, criminal defense lawyer, joining us from Toronto.